morning. 168 days, 23 hours and counting towards the 8th August general elections. Kenyans are already geared. The mood is in. The talks are around it, and every action is almost resonating with the timelines. This is a review segment of the Power Breakfast Show. My name is Charles Odhiambo, and in my panel today, it's my pleasure to introduce Cynthia Mutere. Cynthia is the Chair, Women League, as well as a governance analyst. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a member of parliament for Chuka Igamba Ngombe, Mheshimiwa Njuki. He comes from the county that decides, proverbially, who becomes the president of this country, Tharaka Nithi County. And of course I have Mheshimiwa Wilbur Otichilo, a member of parliament for Emuhaya. There's always a difference, Emuhaya, Luanda.
Luanda came from Emuhaya.
Luanda came from Emuhaya.
Yes.
Ah, nice, very nice. The land of our brothers, the Banyore community.
The Banyore community.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and
welcome.
Good morning. Again.
Thank you for having us.
We have a packed schedule today. We seem to be having so much action around our political scenario. Incidentally, both the members of parliament, Cynthia, are gunning for the gubernatorial seats. Maybe we start from there. Why do you think there's a craze for the gubernatorial seat?
Probably I would say a lack of seeing public participation, because when you see the first governors, it was like the first regime coming in, and there was a lot to be laid down, a lot of policy to be laid down, a lot of structures to be laid down. So as far as devolution is concerned, the people have not really felt the fruit of devolution, because really the implementation of that had to wait for the legal framework, structures to be put in place. Assemblies had to pass these laws, and so you find that they've actually just had probably 2 years or less to actually get some fruits on the ground, the low-hanging fruits that the citizens can use. And so you'd find that the next governors who are coming in will find those structures already laid, and then they would just come in and begin to run with that.
So in your opinion, in your analysis, you feel we have now set off the block?
Yes, we have.
And devolution is now ready to roll?
Yes, it is. A lot of framework has been laid down.
Don't you think it would be unfair to judge the outgoing governors now based on the period they have served?
There has been a lot of bottlenecks, especially with disbursement of funds. I know that's why the government's also joined the campaign of Pesa Mashinani, which also birthed a new political party. But it would be sort of unfair to a certain extent. Yeah, we would probably judge them for 2 years.
Maybe you should have given them one more term?
For certain places, no. I don't want to campaign for any governors. It would be how best you worked with what you were given.
The gentlemen are not so happy that I'm even thinking of giving these people one more term. How is it on the ground for you? And what exactly drives you towards this? Is it what she says?
First of all, I want to agree with Cynthia. In every kind of organization, we normally have what we call transitional managers. They happen to be an unlucky one that have got to do the craftsmanship to make sure they put systems in place. But on the other hand, the implementers have to come in after that, and these are the implementers now that are going to come in after this. However, 5 years was a very long time for one to be claiming to have been doing laying down of the structures. They should have been used to 1 year, 2 years, and then the rest of the time they should have been down to business. But however, that's not happened in most places where we find the resources really were not very managed well, and nothing may change in this particular case. In Tharaka Nithi, it's one of those places where you cannot lay your eyes on one project that we can call a flagship project. It's been like an extension of what the members of parliament are doing, where you maybe a member of parliament has been doing one class in a school, then now we have another class being done by the county government. That's not what we are expecting. We are expecting the members of parliament to continue with their work of what they do with CDF, the MCAs to continue,
which has now been taken away from you, presumably, and handed over to devolution.
Yes, and then we expect the MCAs to be able to do a job that's more or less similar to the one of the members of parliament. But then we expected to see what has been missing in the gap between what the national government could do, mostly through the ministers, and what the governor can do. You see, the essence of the devolution to ensure that we are equal distribution of resources, more or less. Because initially what used to happen, people used to lobby for resources through their cabinet secretaries, the ministers that time. So that you find areas where you have ministers because they are very close to resources, develop faster than those areas that have never had an opportunity to have a minister. And that was the essence of making sure that now, whether you're in opposition zone, whether you're in government, in the leading, the government of the day zone, you should be able to get those resources. That is why we had the KANU regime being really criticized, because those who were loyal to KANU really got resources. Those who remain in the opposition who
really
left for the dogs.
Wilbur,
yes.
She says the first term for most governors was laying framework, policy issues and all the rest, and so it would be a bit harsh to judge their performance based on that.
Thank you. It is true to some extent. What Cynthia said is true, but we must recall that prior to establishment of the county government, we had a transitional authority which was mandated way before the elections to set up systems in all the counties.
Did they do that, Cynthia?
Well, Cynthia will tell you.
They carried on into the first 2 years, and up to now I think they're still also in place, and they're still checking, where they had the responsibility to make sure that functions as laid down in the Constitution had to be transferred from national government to the county governments. You need to remember that these are not glorified local governments. These are now county governments, and they operate as entities, and so that transition of some functions
needed to be. Wilbur, what's your take about what he says, that indeed, okay, much as we say they needed more time, they didn't need 5 years?
No, that's why I had started with transitional authority, because transitional authority was supposed to put the foundation so that the new county governments, once they came in, they should have found the system in place, and they should have now just taken up their functions. But as expected in transition, it didn't happen in many areas.
Well, then we'll be sorry for.
But what I want to say
we'll be looking at this and much more in the last.
Just for your information.
No. I'll give you more time.
On the transition authority.
Yeah, I'll give you more time.
Okay.
Let's first of all look at the newspapers, and of course, like I said, the two gentlemen are gunning for the gubernatorial seat, and we'll be spending quite a bit of time talking about that this morning. Now, turning to the headlines and the Business Daily, we have the competition's watchdog now stepping into the Uber taxi, airport taxi wars. Remember, a number of Uber taxis were clamped when they went to pick clients at the airport. They were all erupted after Kenya Airports Authority blocked some operators in favor of the yellow airport taxis. The story and many more in the Business Daily, where KENHA, the Kenya National Highways Authority, also loses power to fine overloaded truck owners. The Standard has a story about NASA Unity Plan being ready, and that the coalition is likely to make the big announcement in the next coming days. There's also an interesting bit which we'll be looking at in details about the possibility of MPs defeating the Uhuru Raila poll rule, the rule that was trying to clamp politicians jumping from one party to another upon losing in the nominations. The Daily Nation has a story about the anger among Kenyans. According to a research, only just about 58% of the elected members of parliament are likely to see the inside of the August House again. According to this polls, among Jubilee supporters, just about 39% are very likely to re-elect their MPs, 46% are not likely, and 15% are not sure. The flip side, the CORD NASA supporters are whooping 43%, are saying no, these people have to be given a chance, but 37% saying no, these people have run their term and should give a chance to others. An interesting story in the education sector. Now, the government is looking for 1.4 billion shillings from all public schools across the country to finance co-curricular activities. Now, this money is supposed to be collected from primary schools, about 226 million, and from secondary schools, about 1.2 billion from the money that was allocated for extracurricular activities in these schools. Already a circular has been issued by the Permanent Secretary Education, Belio Kipsang, urging all heads of schools to make remittances accordingly. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Standard on page 4 today, and this is going to be our opening story, talks about a survey that most MPs are not likely to be re-elected. CORD supporters say leaders who have decamped to ruling Jubilee will not make it back to Parliament. I start with you, Wilbur.
Yes.
How likely is this, or I mean, how true could this be? Most of you
Yes, I think the survey has a lot of truth, and probably, I would say probably it's even more lenient, because I was in the 10th Parliament, and I thought, in my view, the 10th Parliament did very well, because we are the people who actually midwived the Constitution, and we did a lot of legislation. But I was shocked when we went for election. More than 70% of my colleagues did make up. In fact, I was in the education committee, and I was the only one who came back. And I was shocked, you know. So I think what the survey is saying is likely to be true, and if not, even more severe than what they have indicated.
Mheshimiwa, what do you think could be the reason? Is it true that those who decamped are not likely to come back? No. The decamping, does it have any effect according to this story?
It depends on where you are serving.
Now, CORD supporters say leaders who decamped the ruling Jubilee will not make it back to Parliament.
That's what I was getting into, because the political dynamics in different zones differ. Because if you decamp in the CORD zone, then you are seen to be like a traitor, irrespective of the fact whether you are very hardworking or you have very high hopes. Your hopes they just dive because of that. But in the Jubilee zones, and those that are seen to be the buffer zones, I don't think that's really the reality. It depends on the individual's performance as per se. Unfortunately, you know, I am a first-time member of Parliament, and there's something we call expectations by the voters. Leave alone expectations, you know, and they are always so high, and the time is so limited. And you have to realize this time we did not even serve 5 years like Wilbur and his friends served in the previous government. It's just been hardly 4 years, because the rest of the time is being taken up by campaigns. We're already in a campaign mode. And I want to remind you that when we came in, the first few months, we were working without remuneration. And you know, when people have no remuneration, they're usually not really very settled. They're not focused.
And that's why Chapter 6 of the Constitution really needs to be adhered to, so that the people who are coming in should be leaders. They're not looking for remuneration. Because you knew as you were coming in and as you were sworn in that it would come. And so that should have not been the motivation really for you to serve.
Unfortunately, it was not really the motivation, but it's the fact that when you serve without remuneration, definitely
it would come.
You may not really be focused. So 3.5 years may not have been
I want to imagine men of the flock, the pastors, not being focused because they are not remunerated. How would it be?
Well, I want you to get me right. I didn't say that we were not working. I said we were working, but may not have been very focused, because you know we are talking about people who have come out of campaigns, and at the same time we are people who have demands, and it's realistic. We have bosses who are very demanding. By the way, you may be having one boss. I have 120,000 bosses who they have different demands, and really I have to be up to the task. I need fuel to run there. I need resources to be able to get to their Rambis and all that. It's not very easy when you have no resources. So it's a fact, because it's a different nature of the job. Therefore, this survey may be right, but I think it's going to be very punitive, having looked at how hard the members of Parliament have worked this time
regardless of them jumping ship the last minute.
However, we are in a generation whereby people now are very enlightened. If you look at a place maybe that had 2 contestants before, now we are having 15 contestants, meaning that this position is becoming very, very demanding, because after devolution, after getting many more people in the legislation, like the MCAs, we have very many MCAs who want to be members of Parliament now, because they feel they have gotten what it takes to be a member of Parliament. So, okay, we have members of Parliament who want to be governors, like the ones who are seated here. So it's becoming very competitive, and that is one of the reasons why we find most people not coming back, because the competition has become more fierce than before.
Not really because they don't perform. Cynthia, what really is the impact of such a massive turnover of representation?
I think service delivery, really, and that's what leads to also voter apathy. It's the same thing when you see the change of leadership, when people don't feel like their leader has served them 2 to their expectation. I think when we promulgated the Constitution in 2010, the people were very excited. There were such high hopes that the things that we aspired for and we gave ourselves in the Constitution would have been implemented by the leadership. And so the stakes were really high. So the new leadership that came in at the 2013 election, the people really expected that they would really go ahead and implement as enshrined in the Constitution. But they also need to realize that there's bureaucracy, there's government bureaucracy, there are things that need to move. Capacities in the assemblies also were a little bit wanting. And so the same thing that the governors are suffering, I think members of parliament also suffered. But you find that members of parliament already had the CDF, they had seen their predecessors, how they worked, and I think many of you were campaigning saying, this is the change that I'm going to bring.
I will give you the reason why it never happened, Cynthia, not in that large scale that we expected. And that is a very pertinent issue. And I'm on spot on exactly why it never happened. The devolution came in and we had implementation of the fourth schedule of the Constitution, whereby we had all these departments and the sectors we are supposed to work squarely under the CDF. Then they were drastically reduced, and the CDF was only left with primary schools, secondary schools, national administration, and security. Now the voter on the ground expects me to give him water, he or she water. They want water. Medicine, they want roads. They want me to fix the dispensary. You know, like upgrade the ad. Promise I'll upgrade it. Give them doctors. Those things are not happening. They expect me to do a ECD class. It's not happening. And really, the voter has not understood the roles of the governor and the role of the member of parliament. As far as the voter is concerned, the most reachable person on the ground is the traditional member of parliament that they always knew, who was master fix-it. You know, everything was supposed to be possible.
But look at it this way, Mheshimiwa Mudomi. Yes. You are not a doctor, but your voter, your 129,000 people, each of them expects you to provide a solution to their health care. Isn't it therefore your role as a member of parliament to build the bridge between the authority that should be bringing these services and the people? Not necessarily do it, but have a rapport with the governor.
And many counties actually have that leadership summit where they're trying to bring synergy between the county governments and the members of parliament and the MCAs, so that you kind of begin to work as a team. I don't know if it's the same in your county.
Well, I would like to say yes. What has happened is not what was expected. When devolution took place, majority of the people didn't understand, as my colleague has said, and therefore there has been that expectation from the people that it is the MP, because when we went for elections we promised so many things, but unfortunately most of those activities have been transferred to the county government. It was expected
in 2010 when we promulgated the Constitution, but you still use them as campaign tools, right?
Yes,
I'll build this bridge, I'll build this road.
Exactly. But then what happened is that some of us, like for me, I expected that once the elections were over, the county governments, the members of parliament and MCAs will work together, so that they will sit down together, chart the development agenda for the country together. But this is not what happened in many counties like mine. Efforts, like for us members of parliament from Vihiga County and the senator, we made an effort to meet the governor so that we would sit together, come up with the county integrated development plan together, so that we work as a team. But it didn't work.
Maybe teething challenges. We'll be right back on this subject after a short commercial break. Now we'll be looking at revelations from this survey. Cynthia, it says according to the research across the political divide, 53% of Jubilee supporters claim that the move by opposition MPs to Jubilee was motivated by development reasons. On the other side, CORD supporters, 59% say no, this is actually not true. It is greed and personal benefits that made them cross over. Just hold it right there. We'll be back after a short commercial break. This is the news review segment on the Power Breakfast Show. I have Cynthia Mutere, Chair Kenya Women League, as well as a governance analyst. I have Mheshimiwa Mudomi Njuki, Member of Parliament for Chuka Igamba Ng'ombe, aspiring governor for Tharaka Nithi County, and I have Mheshimiwa Wilbur Otichilo, Member of Parliament for Emuhaya, aspiring governor
for Vihiga County.
County.